You're a cop with 12 years of honest service, and your boss, someone you trusted, frames you for his crimes. Overnight, your career, your reputation, your entire world collapses. That was me. Betrayed, humiliated, and cast aside. But I didn't break. I fought back, and what I uncovered tore his empire apart. Want to know how I got justice in the most satisfying way possible? Stick around. This revenge story will leave you speechless. Pause. Screen fades to black. Title card appears with dramatic sound effect. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah March. I'm 30, living in Chicago, and I've been a police officer for over a decade. But this story isn't about chasing bad guys or wearing a badge. It's about betrayal, resilience, and the kind of justice that feels like a punch to the gut in the best way. Today, I'm sharing a real-life story from my career, one that changed how I see trust, power, and the fight for what's right. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone who underestimated you, this one's for you. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's dive into a story that might just hit you right in the heart. Ready? Here we go. I grew up in a gritty corner of Chicago, where the air smelled of exhaust and the streets hummed with life. Sirens shouting, the clatter of L trains overhead. My dad was a mechanic, his hand always stained with grease, and my mom taught third grade. Her voice soft but firm. They raised me to believe in doing the right thing, even when it's hard. That belief was my compass when I joined the Chicago Police Department at 18, fresh out of high school, with a dream of making my city safer. By 30, I was Officer Sarah March, a 12-year veteran known for my integrity. The precinct was my second home. I knew every detail. The creak of the third-floor stairs, the flicker of the fluorescent lights in the break room, the bitter tang of burnt coffee that lingered in the air. I'd spent years on patrol, chasing leads through rain-soaked alleys, filling out paperwork until my wrists ached, and mentoring rookies who reminded me of the wide-eyed girl I used to be. My colleagues called me Iron March, not because I was tough, but because I never bent, never took shortcuts, never looked the other way. At the top of our chain was Deputy Commissioner John Kessler. John was a force, 6'2", broad-shouldered, with a gravelly voice that commanded attention. He had a politician's smile, the kind that charmed city officials and made headlines. Kessler cracks down on crime, but there was something about him that set my nerves on edge. His eyes were cold, calculating, like he was always playing a game no one else knew the rules to. I ignored it for years. I was too busy doing my job, logging evidence, testifying in court, keeping my head down. But there were signs I should have noticed. Late-night meetings with a select group of officers, always behind closed doors. Evidence logs that vanished on high-profile cases. Whispers about cash changing hands. Favors for the right people. I told myself it was just precinct gossip. John was untouchable, a department legend. Who was I to question him? Then came the smuggling case. It was massive, millions in contraband moving through Chicago's ports, drugs and weapons slipping past customs like water through a sieve. I was on the task force, working 16-hour days, chasing leads with a knot in my stomach. We were close to a bust, so close I could feel it. But then it fell apart. A shipment got through, the media caught wind, and the department needed a scapegoat. That scapegoat was me. It started with a letter on my desk, tucked between a stack of case files. I walked into the precinct that morning, my boots squeaking on the linoleum, the air heavy with the usual mix of coffee and sweat. The letter was from Internal Affairs, typed in cold, black ink. Officer Sarah March, You are hereby suspended pending investigation into falsified clearance documents. My heart stopped. The words swam on the page, my hands trembling as I read them again. Falsified documents? Me? I'd never so much as misfiled a parking ticket. My chest tightened, like someone had wrapped a chain around my ribs. I stormed to John's office, my pulse pounding so loud it drowned out the precinct's chatter. "Sir," I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. "This is a mistake. I didn't sign any clearance papers." John leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers steepled, his face a mask of disappointment. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and smooth, "the evidence is clear. Your signatures on the documents that let that shipment through. I'm disappointed." That word, disappointed, hit like a slap. I felt my face flush, my hands clenching into fists. "Those aren't my signatures," I snapped, slamming the letter on his desk. He didn't flinch. His lips twitched into a smirk, just for a second, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. "Prove it," he said, his eyes locking onto mine, daring me to try. That smirk became my nightmare. I left his office, my legs unsteady, my breath shallow. By the end of the day, my badge was confiscated, my locker cleared out, my name dragged through the mud. Colleagues I'd laughed with over coffee, who trusted me with their lives on the troll, wouldn't meet my eyes. The local news ran the story: Chicago cop suspended in smuggling scandal. My phone buzzed non-stop. Texts from friends, my mom, even my old high school coach. "Sarah, what happened?" I couldn't answer. I didn't know how. I sat on my couch that night, staring at the folded uniform in a cardboard box, the badge I had polished every morning now collecting dust. My apartment felt too small, the walls closing in, the hum of the refrigerator mocking my silence. I felt powerless, like I'd been thrown into a storm with no anchor. The worst came a week later. I was grabbing coffee at a diner near the precinct, trying to clear my head. Two officers sat in a booth nearby, their voices low but clear. "March took the fall," one said, stirring his coffee. "Kessler's golden, always is." My mug froze halfway to my lips. John Kessler, my boss, my mentor, the man I'd respected for years, had forged my signature to save himself. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to scream, to march back to the precinct and confront him, but I knew it was useless. He had power, connections, a system that protected him. I was just one officer, suspended and disgraced. Every night I'd lie awake, replaying that smirk, those forged signatures, the whispers in the diner. My fists clenched under the sheets, my nails digging into my palms until they left crescent-shaped marks. I felt like a fool for trusting him, for believing in a department that let men like John thrive. But somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance flickered. I wasn't going to let him win, not like this. One sleepless night, I couldn't take it anymore. The clock glowed 3:17 a.m., and I was pacing my apartment, the floorboards creaking under my bare feet, the city's hum filtering through the window. I kept seeing John smirk, hearing his voice. "Prove it." That challenge lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to roll over. I was going to fight. The next morning, I called Carla, the precinct's records clerk, and one of the few people who still answered my calls. She'd been with the department longer than me, a quiet woman with a sharp mind and a knack for remembering where every file was buried. "I need access to the archives," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "Old case files, audit trails, anything." Carla hesitated, her voice low over the phone. "Sarah, you're suspended. If they catch you, it's over for you." "I don't care," I said, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles whitened. "I need to do this. She sighed, long and heavy, then gave me the key code to the records room, a dusty basement the department had all but forgotten. That evening, I slipped into the precinct after hours, my heart hammering as I punched in the code. The door groaned open, revealing a labyrinth of filing cabinets, stacks of yellowed folders, and a sharp smell of mildew and old paper. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the concrete floor. I didn't know where to start, but I knew the truth was in there somewhere. I dove in, hours blurring into days, my eyes burning from squinting at faded ink, my fingers raw from flipping through brittle pages. Coffee cups piled up on a rickety desk, my back ached from hunching over files, and my clothes smelled of dust and desperation. But I kept going, driven by that spark, that need to prove I wasn't the liar John had painted me to be. On the 6th night, I found it. A folder buried in a mislabeled box marked Port Audits 2010-2020. My hands trembled as I opened it, my breath catching. Inside were dozens of clearance documents, all signed with John's name, not mine. The signatures matched the ones used to frame me, down to the sharp loop of the J, the slant of the K. I traced the dates with my finger. 10 years of fake clearances, all tied to smuggling cases that had mysteriously collapsed. I sat back on the cold floor, my heart racing, the folder heavy in my lap. This wasn't just about me. John had been running a shadow operation for a decade, and I held the proof to bring it all down. I spent the next week building an airtight case. My apartment turned into a war room. Papers pinned to the walls, red string connecting dates and names, highlighters scattered across my kitchen table. I photocopied every document, cross-referenced audit trails, and matched timestamps to case files. My eyes stung from lack of sleep, my hands shook from too much coffee, but every page I cataloged felt like a brick in the wall I was building against John. I knew I couldn't just walk into internal affairs with a stack of papers. John had friends in high places, cops, city council members, even judges. If I showed my face, he'd find a way to twist it, to bury me again. So I went anonymous. I bought a cheap burner phone, created an untraceable email, and scanned every piece of evidence into a single file. My hands hovered over the keyboard, my heart pounding, as I typed a subject line: Deputy Commissioner Kessler, corruption evidence. The email was simple, one line: look closer at John Kessler. The truth is in the files. I attached the documents, hit send, and held my breath. The silence in my apartment was deafening, the weight of what I'd done settling over me like a storm cloud. Then came the waiting. Every day felt like a lifetime. I checked the burner phone obsessively, my stomach in knots, expecting a call, a knock at my door, anything. What if Internal Affairs ignored it? What if John's connections buried it? I paced my apartment, the floorboards groaning, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. But I'd played my hand. The truth was out there, and I had to trust it would find its mark. 3 weeks later, Carla called, her voice trembling with excitement. "Sarah, Internal Affairs is raiding the precinct. They're pulling files, questioning everyone. Kessler's locked in a meeting with them right now, and he looks like he's seen a ghost." My heart leapt, a grin spreading across my face. I wanted to be there, to see his smug face crumble, but I stayed put. I'd set the trap, and now it was springing shut. The investigation exploded. What started as a probe into John's clearances unraveled a web of corruption, bribery, money laundering, evidence tampering, all tied to a network of officers and city officials. 4 of John's loyalists were implicated, their names splashed across the news. I watched it unfold from my couch, my hands gripping a mug of cold tea as headlines screamed, "Chicago Police Scandal Shakes City." John was arrested in his office, the footage looping on every local channel. His tie was loosened, his face pale, his eyes wide with panic as they cuffed him. The man who'd smirked at me, who dared me to prove my innocence, was gone, replaced by someone who knew the game was over. A month later, I got a letter from the department. It was short, formal, no trace of an apology. "Officer Sarah March, you are reinstated effective immediately." I stared at it, my hands steady but my chest tight with a flood of emotions. Relief, triumph, a quiet pride. I'd cleared my name. But more than that, I exposed a system that had shielded men like John for far too long. I returned to the precinct on a crisp Chicago morning, the wind biting at my face as I pinned my badge to my uniform. The weight of it felt different now. Heavier, like it carried the ghosts of those weeks in the records room. Colleagues stared as I walked in, some nodding in respect, others looking away in shame. Carla met me in the break room, her eyes shining as she pulled me into a hug. "You did it, Sarah," she whispered. "You freaking did it." The real payoff came that afternoon. I was called to a meeting with the new interim commissioner, Elena Diaz, a woman with a steel backbone and a reputation for cleaning house. She sat me down in her office, the city skyline glinting through the window, her eyes sharp but warm. "Sarah," she said, her voice steady, "we found your file, the anonymous one. You didn't just save yourself. You saved this department from rotting from the inside out." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I just wanted the truth," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. Diaz leaned forward, her hands folded on the desk. "You've got guts, March. We need more like you. Whatever you need to keep doing what you do, you've got it." I nodded, a faint smile breaking through. As I left her office, I passed John's old desk, now empty, a few straight papers fluttering in the breeze from an open window. I paused, my fingers brushing the polished wood, and for a moment, I saw his smirk again, heard his voice. "Prove it." But this time, it didn't sting. It felt like victory. The fallout kept coming. John was charged with fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction, facing decades in prison. The 4 officers who resigned were under investigation, their careers in tatters. The department overhauled its oversight, implementing new checks to prevent another Kessler. My name, once dragged through the mud, was quietly cleared in the press, a small headline buried on page 3. "Officer reinstated after smuggling probe." I didn't need a front-page story or a medal. Standing in that precinct, my badge gleaming under the flickering lights, I felt something deeper. Validation. I'd taken on a giant not with fists or guns, but with a dusty file and a refusal to break. And I'd won. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about exposing a truth that had been buried for years. A truth that protected the wrong people and hurt the ones trying to do right. Betrayal cuts deep, especially when it comes from someone you looked up to, someone with the power to ruin you. But I learned that power doesn't make you untouchable. It makes you vulnerable when you abuse it. Those weeks in the records room changed me. The dust, the sleepless nights, the weight of every page I turned. They're part of me now. I'm back on patrol, mentoring rookies, walking the same streets I swore to protect. But I carry that spark of defiance with me, a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the truth. I hope my story shows you that justice doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, relentless, like a single file that shakes a system to its core. So what's the lesson? Never underestimate the person who's willing to fight for what's right, no matter how small they seem. Because when the truth is on your side, you're unstoppable. If this story gave you goosebumps, smash that like button and drop a comment below. Have you ever fought for justice against all odds? Or maybe you've seen someone get the payback they deserved. Tell us about it. If you love real-life stories of triumph, betrayal, and sweet, sweet justice, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.